Hi, welcome to the Firestarters video series. My name is Steve Scheier. I've worked in cannabis since 2018. I talk and I write about power, and I offer leaders in cannabis leadership guidance and curated advisory boards. And later this year, I'm going to be offering CEOs in cannabis an opportunity to join a CEOs group, but more on that later. I'm the co-author of Power Up, Essential Tools for Cannabis Leaders, which is available on Amazon. I hope you've got your copy. Our guest today is Laurie Parfitt, a name that I have been a little bit nervous about pronouncing. But Laurie is the principal at LKP Impact Consulting and LLC. I met Laurie a few weeks ago, and I was so taken by her story in cannabis and how she has worked in cannabis, and I wanted to have her on the show. So Laurie, thank you for making time today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. So Laurie, I always ask every person who's on the show, give me 3 words from your point of view that describe cannabis in the US or in your lovely state of Illinois. What are the 3 words that come to mind?
Wow. Exciting, fun, and I would say a little volatile.
Exciting, fun,
Especially here in Illinois.
Feel free to elaborate on that if you'd like for a minute. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so absolutely. So Illinois is a limited license state. And what that means is the state of Illinois really has a lot of authority over how many licenses are released, and they keep it to certain numbers. With that happening, we have a lot of licenses that are actually being held up in the courts right now. So we've got 245 licenses that are currently being held up in the courts due to some lawsuits in regards to them for both dispensaries and craft grows. And so with that comes, challenges for those who have applied for licenses and have to wait to see what's going to happen. And so hopefully we'll see things come to fruition soon. But for now, the state of Illinois is really very much in flux.
Wow. Wonderful. So thank you for that summation. And I always like to start off by asking people what their journey to cannabis, how that developed. And I'm sure 20 years ago, you didn't think you would be working in this area. So please tell us about your journey, because its origin stories are so interesting to me. And I'm sure they're interesting to people who watch this webcast as well. So please tell us about your origin story in cannabis.
Absolutely. So like you said, I never thought I was going to end up in cannabis. I had, like a lot of people, utilized in college, and then ended up ending my usage because I knew that I had to get myself gainful employment. And I think my father would have killed me if I had lost out on a job opportunity due to a failed drug screen. So like everybody, I did the responsible thing, and I stopped partaking. And I went through my 20s and 30s, not really partaking for the most part until sort of in towards the end. And I worked in CPG. I was in CPG for about 15 to 16 years. So that's consumer products. Prior to that, I'd been in financial services. And I was working for a company I'd been with for about 5 years, and food and beverage. And I got approached by one of my former leaders, who is actually my mentor. And he called me up and said, I've become the president of a cannabis company. You wanted to join me?
Yeah.
And I tend to be a pretty high risk person. I have a very high risk tolerance, and I like exciting, interesting things. And so I hopped over with him and became the vice president of customer engagement and marketing for Mission Dispensaries. And we ran 10 dispensaries across 6 states. And I did all of the marketing and customer experience for it. And to be honest, I'd worked in CPG for a long time, and it's really fun to work on cool products. I worked on Ragu and Bertolli, I worked on Kraft, all kinds of, great, well-known products that you could find in the grocery store. And I loved being able to see, in real life what I was working on and see how it came to fruition and how, people could utilize it. But cannabis was totally different for me. So I began on the medical side. So the dispensaries that I ran were medical. And I sat in those dispensaries and I listened to people come in the door, and I heard them say to the receptionists that they didn't want to give them their email address or any of their contact information because they were afraid their spouse would find out or their neighbors would find out. And these were just people trying to live better lives and take their own healthcare back.
Hmm.
Additionally, when I started, I went to our dispensary in Michigan, and our founder there had me sit down with every single member of the team. And I got to talk to everybody and find out what their story was. And these stories about what brought them into cannabis were so impactful, and how it had dramatically changed their lives and put them on a trajectory they never could have imagined. That really spoke to me as a person. And I
Hmm.
went from being, your traditional capitalist CPG person to someone who became, no pun intended, but very mission based.
Uh-huh.
And that's really stuck with me. And so coming into the cannabis industry for me was truly life-changing and transforming from both a professional perspective as well as a personal perspective.
Yeah. So, Laura, you talked when we spoke earlier, you told me about this Lead with Love campaign. And
Yes,
it was really taken by that. So I'd like you to describe that to people because I thought it was
absolutely.
just awesome.
Absolutely. So, like I said, I spent time with a lot of our dispensary staff, not just in the Michigan location, but in every location, really hearing people's stories, and then seeing, our patients come in the door, and hearing them talk about, what cannabis meant to them. And what I realized was, as we were thinking about building Mission's brand strategy, was that I really wanted people to feel safe, supported, and loved
Hmm.
within our dispensaries so that they could experience cannabis in the best way possible. And so my belief is when people do feel safe, supported, and loved, they are their best selves. They give you their best. So
Right, definitely.
I utilize love as our brand essence. So when you think about the brand pyramid, this is very traditional CPG branding. At the bottom, you have your points of parity, how you're like everybody else, and your points of differentiation, how you're different, your brand promise, what you're promising consumers every time they interact with your brand, the response they receive from that, and then your brand essence. And your brand essence is what you want people to feel when they interact with your brand, your people, or anything to do with your establishment.
Right.
And so I utilize love as our essence. So everybody can rally around love. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to feel love. Everybody wants to have love. I mean, you look at the music industry and everything's about love.
Or
And
loss of love.
so it's the one thing that everybody can rally around. Everybody
Right.
wants to feel like they're part of it.
Right.
And so we utilize love as the brand essence. And the way we activated that was lead with love. And so what that really meant was we wanted all of our patients to feel loved. We wanted our staff to feel loved. We wanted everybody who interacted with anybody in our organization to feel loved. Because in a small company like ours, you have to live your brand.
Right.
And this was an easy brand to live. And so we developed Lead with Love. And what Lead with Love really means, it's three things. One is positivity. So it's approaching every situation with positive intent and
Hmm.
assuming positive intent.
Right.
So, you get that text from somebody that's like really short and curt, and you're like, ooh, that was kind of harsh and mean.
Uh-huh.
But what you don't know is maybe they were driving and they were trying to, unfortunately try to text you while they were driving, or they were trying to do something and they knew you needed an answer. So they just answered you quickly. And there was no really intent to be, nasty or curt.
Right. For
So
sure.
it's really important to just assume positive intent, because if you can assume positive intent, then you won't be upset and you can approach everything in a positive way. The second piece of it is having a strong moral code. And that's doing the right thing even when it's hard.
Hmm.
And so what that, the way I sort of look at that is, you're in a restaurant with a bunch of people and everybody's having a great time. You're with your great group of friends and you all get along and everything's going great until someone's order comes out wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that person dress down that server.
Mm.
And everybody gets uncomfortable. You don't expect it. You thought you knew that person better.
Mm-hmm.
I personally believe those are the moments when you see who that person truly is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so having a strong moral code is really being able to rise above those situations and
Right.
do the right thing.
Right.
And then the third piece of that is selflessness, and that's doing something without the expectation of anything in return. And so what we did was for our social media platform, we decided, you truthfully can't sell cannabis or do anything like that on social media.
Right.
But we were going to use our social media to build community,
Mm-hmm.
to make it so there were people in the world who wouldn't feel so alone. Let's take the shame and stigma away from using cannabis. Let them see real people who have true issues and how they utilized cannabis to solve them. And maybe someone out there would feel less alone in the world with their situation. And so we did the Lead with Love initiative, and we asked our teams across the country to send us a video, just a little video on your phone, no production, none of that.
Right.
Just tell us your story. And this was our first Lead with Love initiative. This is about being selfless. You might give something without getting anything in return. And we had a lot of success with it. We chose 5 people with 5 stories. We brought them into Chicago. We did a whole video and photo shoot, did a huge event with the executive team. And we were surprised at how emotional that day was. But we had these beautiful stories of our people being able to tell the world how they dealt with autoimmune, skin issues, back pain and depression,
Mm-hmm.
and how they were able to mitigate some of these symptoms and issues with cannabis.
Yeah.
And for me, lead with love is all about that. If you can lead with love and you can do the right thing, then revenue will come, everything will come, because you're putting good out into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, let me applaud you for doing this. This is really fantastic. And most of the people I've been in cannabis over this last 4 years have been very receptive to messages like that. Sometimes you get into people or you interact with people that are not. At the end of the day, cannabis for virtually everybody I've met is much more than just simply making money. It really is being in service. It really is helping people. I've been so happy and gratified to see that. And I imagine when you had a campaign like this, that it had a positive impact on your team.
Absolutely.
So can you speak a little bit to what that positive impact, because this is exactly why people choose to work in your store or your dispensary more than somebody else's, or they're working with you rather than doing something else.
Absolutely. So the team that directly reported into me, we really focused on love and creating a loving, supportive culture. We believed in the marketing organization, especially. And so I had all of marketing, customer experience, our customer support center, everything started with us. And so since we developed that brand strategy, we had to be stewards of the brand and we had to be the example for the company. And so how we treated each other on the team was really indicative of how the organization was going to accept leading with love. And so for our team, we were a very cohesive team. When I posted jobs for my organization, and I directly pulled out of our dispensaries, I felt I can teach anybody marketing, but I can't teach people some of those soft skills that they learn in those dispensaries and some of that wonderful knowledge. When we posted jobs for the marketing organization, I had so many internal candidates that it was almost hard to choose because we created such a loving, supportive organization. And when we looked into the stores, we had one of our dispensaries where we were actually we were doing a remodel. And just like any remodel, towards the end, you're like, okay, let's just get a couple things done. And we had a blank wall in there, and we said, okay, to the dispensary team, we're like, make it your wall. Go get some artwork, anywhere you want, and just put it up. And I got a email from the GM of that dispensary about a week or two later. And what the team had done was they had gone to some gardening center and they'd gotten these plants that were in the shape of letters. And they had created the Lead with Love wall.
Oh, that's so awesome.
You know, to me, like, that warmed my heart and made me feel like I'd actually had a direct impact within the organization. And that people were hearing it and they were rallying around it and they were seeing the value of creating a loving, supportive environment. And since I've left that organization, to be honest, I try to espouse that in everything that I do, because, you know, people love to feel engaged and inspired. And so as someone who's a leader within the industry, you know, I want people to feel safe, supported, and loved whenever they work with me. And I want people to feel engaged and inspired, so they want to join me on the journey.
Yeah, this is a perfect example of, if you put a little time and effort into this, you get so much more. You get people who want to work there. You get people who persevere. You get people who recommend their friends. It just, yeah, it's so much better. So, Laurie, we have a couple more things for you. Thank you, first of all, for that story. That was really an awesome story. I really appreciate it. Tell us about your work, your current work, and your focus.
Absolutely. So my practice is LKP Impact Consulting, and it really focuses on the cannabis space. I focus mainly on marketing and sales strategy. So I call myself your fractional CMO. So if you look at traditional industries, CMOs, the tenure of them is about 18 months. In cannabis, it's about 6. And, you know, with cannabis, it's an exciting world. It's a great place to be, but everybody's just kind of getting things up and running. And marketing tends to be an area that they don't know as much about, because they spend all of their time on operations and cultivation, manufacturing.
They struggle with it.
Absolutely. And so what I do is I really come in and I can do a couple things. I can set your whole marketing organization up. I can build a strategy around it. I can build out your pillars. I can source your vendors and start executing. I can also come in and do some special projects for you. So if you need, you know, a brand strategy created, you need a whole new brand or product group created, I can do that as well. I do it mainly across brands and dispensaries. And so, you know, I founded this organization because I really wanted to be in the industry. I wanted to be part of something great. And I wanted to contribute at the highest level to as many organizations as I possibly can. Additionally, I'm on the board of Cannabis Conference for Cannabis Business Times, and I sit on Illinois Women in Cannabis as well. And I mentor for both Illinois Women in Cannabis and SEMA, which is a marketing organization. And I also teach and mentor at the Hatchery, which is a nonprofit food and beverage incubator.
So you're very busy. So Laurie, tell us about how if people want to reach you, how do they best do that?
Absolutely. Send me an email, Laurie at lkpimpact.com. Send me an email, connect with me on LinkedIn. And you can always message me through LinkedIn. I do not screen that. I always read it and I answer it. And if you have any questions, any concerns, anything you want to talk about, I make myself available to help in any way I possibly can.
Wonderful. So one thing that I also wanted to chat with you about is, what are the challenges of being a female in cannabis, and what would you like to see the industry, how would you like to see the industry change? So
like any industry, it's always challenging to be a woman. So whether you're in CPG, whether you're in pharma, whether you're in, you know, financial services, it's always challenging to be a woman, regardless. In the cannabis industry, it tends to be a little bit more challenging just because it's a smaller, more nascent industry. You have a lot of businesses that are just starting and a lot of people who haven't, you know, held leadership roles before. And you have the dynamic of the MSO versus, you know, the smaller regional operators. Unfortunately, this industry has sort of a lack of females at a lot of the executive levels. So I would like to see that change. So a lot of what I do with my practice is I support all organizations, but I also make a point of really helping to support women in the industry, whether they're entrepreneurs within the industry, whether they're individuals who want to start ancillary operations like myself, or they're looking to be mentored and taught to rise up within the ranks. I do everything I can to help those women. And so what I have found to be so wonderful and empowering in this industry is that all of us women in it have really come together. And a lot of us know each other, we work together, and we help each other rise up. And so I would love to see more women at executive level positions. I would love to see more female founders and CEOs. And I think it's just going to take time and with the industry to kind of catch up and see us, get into those roles to be more successful within such an exciting industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And Laurie, just one more thing. Are there particular sectors in the cannabis that you really focus on?
Yeah, well, absolutely. So I focus on brands. So whether you're a brand startup, and so if you're an asset light model where you're licensing your brand across the country, I do a lot of that work where I help you with brand strategy, or I can help you license your brand across the country so that you can get some national distribution. So, branding in this space is very different than branding in, traditional industries where, you can produce in one state and you can ship across the country and create a national brand that way. In this industry, you really have to do it on a state-by-state basis.
Right.
And so it makes it more challenging. So I specialize in that. And then the other side of the business that I really specialize in is dispensary operations and marketing. And so how do you get your best assortments created? How do you create an engaging, inspiring experience for a consumer at retail? How do you market a dispensary so that you can create some of that awareness and conversion?
Right. Well, Laurie, it was a great pleasure to have you on the show today. I'm really glad we were able to spotlight your passion and your thinking on today's show, and really appreciate you coming on.